All right. Hello and welcome to the week 11 iteration of Nerding Out with Nick Bodiford. I am joined from across the fantasy universe by one Mr. Brian Drake of Fighting Chance Fantasy and Fantasy Football Hustle. Drake, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here, Nick. Thanks for having me, bud.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. We're diving right into the must starts for week 11. Can you kick us off with one of yours?
Sure. And this isn't going to be maybe the most controversial thing you're going to hear all week, but I love CeeDee Lamb this week. And per my co-host, Dwayne McFarland on the Fantasy Football Hustle, I'll just completely steal what he tweeted out because it's perfect. About the Chiefs play the seventh most man coverage in the NFL. CeeDee Lamb against man coverage this year has over 220 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's a Dak's go-to guy. He gets open half the time, 50% against single man with a 28% target share. Also, now that Gallup's back, you're seeing him kick into the slot more. Last week, he played the slot almost 70% of the time, whereas weeks 1 to 9, it was more under 25%. So I love CeeDee Lamb this week. Think he's going to go off. That should be just an absolute shootout and so much fun for fantasy. Chiefs, Cowboys.
I love that. And that's a team I need to pay more attention to the zone and man coverage splits for Dallas. I'm usually all over that for Buffalo. Like when zone defense week, it's a Cole Beasley week, but that's fascinating. And I had not actually checked CeeDee's slot rate because it was like with Gallup out, Cedric Wilson could only really play in the slot, so he and Cooper were kind of pushed to the perimeter. But that is 70%. That is awesome. Okay, I like that. That was a great one to kick things off with. My first guy is, I hate to do this to you, it's Mark Ingram.
I just traded for Mark Ingram today, full disclosure.
I love it. Okay, so Ingram, he's going up against your Philadelphia Eagles, who their front seven, I mean, they got some good players, but like that linebacking core, I think is one you can take advantage of. Kamara was downgraded from limited participant in practice on Wednesday to DNP on Thursday. Seems like he came back too quickly from the MCL sprain. So I'm expecting another 20 some touches for Ingram. What do you think? Are you fearing? I guess you're not. You just traded for him, so you're thinking he's got a good week 11 matchup here.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you roster Alvin Kamara anywhere, you should be going out and trying to acquire Mark Ingram. And maybe before this news broke, because folks are saying, well, look, Kamara's back. And now Ingram goes back to kind of a 1B, almost 1C role with that team in terms of touches. But going into your fantasy playoffs, you have to have that backfield solidified. And I think you're right. If he's playing against Philadelphia this weekend, Philadelphia, they like to play a ton of zone. They'll allow the running backs to catch everything underneath, and he'll be able to run, pretty much do whatever he wants. So I think you can have a nice top 15 week for Mark Ingram if Alvin Kamara is out. Love that.
Cool. Give us your second must start.
All right. Second must start. Here's another guy I'm trying to trade for a lot. It's Jaylen Waddle. Over the past 4 weeks, now I'm talking about Jaylen Waddle's opponent this week. I just lost it. The Jets. How can I forget the Jets? Well, again, everybody forgets the Jets. So they're horrific against the wide receivers, giving up over 47 points per game to the position. Over the last 3 weeks, no team has given up more passing first downs than the Jets. I just kept digging up terrible Jets stats. Also, over the last 3, the Jets have given up what PFF calls explosive plays. They've given up the most. In terms of passing yards allowed the last 3 weeks, they've also given up the most, 999. Here's Jaylen Waddle's targets going back from week 6 on: 13, 8, 12, 10, and 6. That's a guy who is now the focal point of the passing offense. I love Jaylen Waddle this week against a terrible, terrible Jets defense.
Cool. Okay, so this plays very nicely with my second must start, which is Mike Gesicki, who is sort of the co-slot receiver there for Miami. And I like everything you said there. The reason I'm excited about Gesicki is the Jets are down both starting safeties at this point. Marcus May just went on injured reserve, and LaMarcus Joyner's already been there. Now, Dawson Knox burned me here last week, but I have to stick process over results. I think Waddle, while he's doing his thing, either, in the slot, stretching the field, whatever, I think Gesicki's just going to eat up these moderate, like short to intermediate gains, I guess. a top 5 tight end. I think I've got him as tight end 4 this week. I mean, they should just blow these guys out. I like this one.
Cool. Now we say that, and because it's the NFL, the Jets are going to win this game.
Sure.
Like we know the Jets are going to win like 42-6. Yeah. And it'll just be ridiculous and Gesicki goose, I guess, again.
I sure hope not. And I am happy to have Tua back under center rather than having Jacoby Brissett out there, who can make some plays, but like he always seemed to me to get scared in the pocket. He does stink. There you go. Okay. All right. Hit me with your wild card. Anything NFL football related you want to talk this week?
Oh man. So I was trying to pick between 2, and I love the 49ers running backs this week, either Elijah Mitchell or Jeff Wilson Jr., whoever's going in there. Because the Jags are middle of the pack in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs. But the 49ers offense last week, they showed you how they want to play the game. Mitchell, 27 rush attempts. Jeff Wilson had 10 himself. I think whoever starts is going to pound the rock and they're going to do well. And if I could squeeze in a bonus one, Joe Burrow. The Raiders on the season are bottom 10 in NFL passer rating allowed. He's coming off a bye. His weapons are all healthy. Chase, Higgins, Boyd. I like him in a smash spot against a Raiders team that looks like they're just out to lunch because they don't have a coach anymore.
Okay, those are both great. On the point about the Niners, Mitchell again registered a DNP, so I think it's probably going to be Jeff Wilson, which I mean he should smash. That should be 18 plus rushes and like that. I mean the Jags have some good pass rushers, but I think Myles Jack missed practice today, so yeah, I think Wilson will knife through there. Deep league call here. Kyle Juszczyk might be viable in some sort of like, crazy deep full point PPR format because he kind of just handles pass catching duties when Jermichael Hasty is not healthy or not available, which he was also DNP again today. So I'm not saying like 12 team don't use Kyle Juszczyk, but if you're in some crazy weird format, he could be a guy. As far as Burrow goes, I think that's a fantastic call. The Bengals are, I think, still number 1 in pass rate over expected inside the red zone. And that was from Mike Leone of Established to Run, tweets those graphics out every week. So I think that's fantastic. It's great when you have, like, it's similar to Josh Allen. Like, a team gets in there. Actually, they do run the ball a little more in scoring position. But when you have a team or a quarterback that like, he's still their guy, even when they get into scoring position, that's great. You love that. My wild card, it's sticking kind of with the same theme, and we're going back to your turf here, the Eagles backfield. Now,
oh boy. Good luck.
Okay. So I wanted to like touch on this, but I did want to get your insight because I think you're a lot more educated on this than I am. But what I'm expecting is that Sanders comes back as the lead guy here this week. And Graham Barfield was tweeting about how he expects the heavy run rate of the Eagles to kind of stick because they were sort of shifting to that. I think in Sanders' last game before injury. And I was viewing that caught me off guard because I was viewing it as like they switched after Sanders got hurt, but I don't think that was the case. The question remains though, like, does Howard come in and rumble for TDs like he has, for the last few years of his career? I don't know. I think, and then Boston Scott, is he going to be the guy that takes over the passing game with, Gainwell was the guy, but Scott's either outplayed him or the coaching staff trusted him more. What do you think, Drake? Where are you at with this backfield?
I think if Miles Sanders is activated for this game, I think that Boston Scott is inactive. I don't think they're going to carry 4 running backs. I think Kenny Gainwell can return kicks and he can play that third running back role. Again, not really well early, what we saw earlier in the season. I think Jordan Howard maintains a role. Maybe it's 60-40 Sanders. I'm looking at this, the numbers here for Miles Sanders in his last game, week 6. He did see 64% of the Eagles rushing attempts and saw 17% of their targets. I was actually talking to Graham about that exact same thing a few days ago. And this is a philosophical shift for the Eagles. They want the ball out of Jalen Hurts' hands, right? They don't want him to throw the football. In their game last week, they threw the ball 3 times in the second half, and one of the passes was an interception. So they want him throwing as little as possible. So they're just going to hammer. I think both guys could have productive days in terms of fantasy. But if Miles Sanders is back, I like him going forward the rest of the season. He's got that juice that Jordan Howard doesn't have. So he could take some of those creases that this great offensive line is creating and take it 70 yards to the house. So I like the call on Miles Sanders this week.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Thank you for the insight. Thank you for your time. This was a blast for me. Again, huge fan. Everybody needs to go follow Drake. Do you want to let the people know your handle, where you're doing what?
Sure. Go over on Twitter at Drake Fantasy. The show is the Fantasy Football Hustle at FF Hustle on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We've still yet to do a TikTok, but we have it set up. Just find the Fantasy Football Hustle wherever you get your podcasts. And Saturday and Sundays, I do show on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, 3 to 5 on Saturday, 7 to 9 Eastern on Sunday with Andrew Erickson. And then, hey, just everywhere else, who knows where I'll be popping up. You might find me on some different shows.
Cool. All right, everybody go check him out. Drake, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Nick.
See ya. Okay. And with that, we switch over to the Sunday 10 a.m. slate. PST time, that is. New Orleans Saints at Philadelphia Eagles, over under points scored at 48 points. Saints are going to be quarterbacked by Trevor Siemian. One would hope that Taysom Hill could take over at some point, but he's dealing with a foot injury right now, is not even likely to play in week 11. So it's not going to be this week. Trevor Siemian is a mid to low quarterback too. Tre'Quan Smith and Deonta Harris are basically playing the same role. They alternate running routes on the perimeter and in the slot. The difference between their average depth of target is less than a yard, between 9 and 10 yards. So they're just kind of the short to intermediate area weapons, despite their downfield skill set. If you have to give the edge to somebody here, I think it's Deonta Harris, because he still is earning return yardage, whereas Smith is just a full-time offensive player. So if you're in a league that rewards for return yards, 25 yards per point, Harris is the guy that you want to start here. Both of them are barely inside the top 48 at the position. Marquez Callaway basically just running sprints down the sidelines here. I'm not using him in fantasy at all. 14.2 average targeted air yards per next gen stats, but Philadelphia is limiting opposing passing games to a explosive pass play rate of just 6%. That's the second lowest mark in the NFL. So yeah, no luck here for Callaway and his downfield role. Adam Troutman has stolen the receiving tight end job from Juwan Johnson. He's run between 23 and 30 routes per game over the last 3 weeks, seen 5 to 7 targets per game during that span. So not a massive workload, but it is consistent. In a world without consistency at tight end, you could use Troutman as a high-end tight end too. In terms of the running backs, so Alvin Kamara was a limited participant with his MCL sprain on Wednesday, downgraded to a DNP, did not participate on Thursday. So Mark Ingram is going to very likely be the starting back here. He absolutely crushed it last week. 14 carries, 47 yards, 1 rushing touchdown through the air, 7 targets, 4 catches, and 61 yards. 4 catches for 61 yards. It was a smash performance. And Dwayne Washington, number 2 back there, was a total non-factor. I think he had 2 touches in all. So Ingram, he's going to mess up the Philadelphia Eagles linebacking core. And actually, we broke this down just a few minutes ago with Brian Drake. Again, Drake, appreciate you coming on. So you know the drill. Mark Ingram, he is a mid to low. I think I've got him as the running back 9 this week. Against the Eagles, they're 22nd in already NEF rating, giving up 9th most half-point PPR points per game, and they are 9th in the NFL, or 9th most in rushing yards, running back targets, and RB receptions per game. So a guy with a dual threat skill set like Ingram, he's old, but he's going to crush this spot. Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts, he's sort of progressing as a passer, but he's not really like elevating a bunch of pass catchers. You might have like 4 guys who get decent passing game totals, but for our purposes, he's still a starter. The problem here is that he's going up against the number 1 run defense in the NFL. The Saints were missing defensive lineman David Onyemata and Marcus Davenport for a combined 10 games. Quan Alexander sat out 4 more. They're all back now, and New Orleans has still limited opposing offenses to 657 rushing yards, period. That's the fewest in the league. Hurts probably can still get the job done, but instead of being like top 5 guy this week, I think I've got him around quarterback 11 or 12. Devonte Smith, been extremely efficient, caught 9 of 12 targets for 184 yards and 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. He is the clear-cut number 1 here, and I think that you can start him really no matter what, but probably as a more of a high floor wide receiver 3. We don't know if he's going to be able to get loose against this Saints secondary. They were able to keep A.J. Brown in check last week, much to my dismay. Positive for Smith, negative for Dallas Goedert is in the concussion protocol. We don't know if he's going to clear. That would mean a lot of targets head towards Smith if Goedert sits. Quez Watkins, slot receiver, he was the biggest beneficiary, though, of Dallas Goedert leaving last week's game with the concussion. I think he's a high-end wide receiver 4. His 4.3 speed can just take the top off of any defense. Again, we thought that the absence of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who is a safety / slot cornerback for the Saints, was going to allow A.J. Brown, who goes in the slot around like 28% of the time, to flourish on those looks. That didn't end up being the case, but maybe a guy who's there full time in Quez Watkins can get the job done. So high-end wide receiver 4, ignore Jalen Reagor. Jack Stoll is very slow and can't jump. He filled in for Dallas Goedert. I'm not going anywhere near him for fantasy purposes. We kind of broke down the running backs earlier on. Miles Sanders, though, probably going to be a decent play, even though it's a tough matchup if he is active. I've got him as a borderline RB2/3. Of course, there's a bit of a trapdoor floor there with all of the people involved. I liked what Drake was saying about Boston Scott probably being deactivated because Kenneth Gainwell carries special teams ability. If active, Gainwell would see 6 targets or something. Maybe he's inside the top 36. Jordan Howard may be inside the top 36, but again, this is kind of a wait and see scenario. Miami Dolphins at New York Jets, over under points scored at 44, opened at 44. Miami Dolphins. So Tua is going to be under center, and he should have a good day here against the Jets. As mentioned earlier on, both free safety Marcus May and strong safety LaMarcus Joyner are on injured reserve now. I think that the 2 interior weapons in Gesicki and Waddle should have great days as a result. So I've got Tua as a mid to high quarterback 2. Waddle, I have him ranked as a wide receiver 3, and Mike Gesicki as the top 5 tight end this week. Albert Wilson is the only other wide receiver who's seeing meaningful playing time in the Jets' perimeter receivers, where Wilson is primarily lining up, are not very good. So I've got Wilson as a boom bust wide receiver 5. I think that you could fire him up in DFS. Myles Gaskin is a terrible, terrible rusher. Now, he's a very good pass catcher, or at least an adequate one. And this is a matchup that we've been targeting for pass catching running backs. The Jets are top 3 in running back receptions allowed per game, 7.6, and running back receiving yards allowed per game, 71.4. So in this one, he's a running back 3. Start him. If you have him, you might have a better option though. But this is the kind of matchup where you start Gaskin if you have him, because why else do you have him? New York Jets. Joe Flacco is going to be the starter here. The Miami Dolphins defense is really strange. Their pass defense units are very good, but they're talented, but they're not really limiting opposing passing games as much as we might expect them to. They rank 18th in pass defense NEF rating, and quarterbacks are scoring 20.1 fantasy points per game against them, tied for 8th most in the NFL. I have Flacco as like a high floor, high ceiling quarterback 2. I think that he can kind of deal to the pass catchers that he has here. I know that's may sound silly, but yeah, I would be looking at him in DFS. You could maybe squeeze him in as a single quarterback streamer. I'm not telling you to. Definitely a 2 QB league start, but I think that Flacco could surprise. Corey Davis, he is basically going 80-20 perimeter slot for his route running. The thing with the Dolphins is they really haven't been able to. So they've got these 2 great corners on the perimeter, Byron Jones and Xavier Howard, but they're still getting beat by perimeter corners. They've been banged up by injuries all year, and one of them had like an Achilles
thing. I mean, he's still playing, but some issue is going on with his Achilles. So maybe injuries are slowing these two guys down. Their slot coverage is really bad. They signed Jason McCourty in the offseason to basically be this like do-it-all guy, presumably playing in the slot. So again, Corey Davis going in there 20% of the time. So that's not something you like want to bank on, but it is a cherry on top that he's going to be able to go in there without Jason McCourty, who is on injured reserve. So I've got Corey Davis as a mid-tier wide receiver 3. Elijah Moore, his slot share has been capped between 55 and 60%. I think that he should see more. He's running 75% of the routes on the perimeter, 25 in the slot. We've already talked about this. The coaching staff has already acknowledged that he should be playing in the slot. We don't know why they feel the need to get Jamison Crowder out there, but they do. So Moore is stuck being a primary perimeter receiver. How has he done? Caught 16 of 19 targets for 195 yards and 3 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks. I think that kind of production is too good for Robert Saleh to continue ignoring. I think that they'll continue to increase his slot routes, but we won't know that until we see it, necessarily. So I've got Moore as just a couple spots behind Corey Davis in the wide receiver 3 tier. Jamison Crowder has the best matchup of the bunch, but the problem is his average depth of target is only 3.5 yards. You can't really bank on him as more than a high floor wide receiver 4. Tight end Ryan Griffin. He's a tight end 2 streaming option. Miami is allowing 13.1 half-point PPR tight end points per game, 7th most in the NFL. Tyler Kroft is on injured reserve. Fellow tight end Tyler Kroft is on injured reserve. So if you need a streamer, Griffin is an option. Running backs, Michael Carter, Ty Johnson, Tevin Coleman. Here's the kicker. Coleman came back last week from a multi-week hamstring injury. He was not very good. He didn't see a ton of usage. He's not going to be fantasy relevant on his own, but he ran 9 routes. He saw 3 targets, which does hurt both Carter and Johnson. He had 4 carries. So again, that's not a ton, but that hurts these guys. Carter maintained a 52% snap share, which is a team lead, but the lowest he's seen since week 5. Johnson was at 32%. Coleman was at 22% from a rushing perspective. Michael Carter saw 16 carries. That's great, but Johnson only saw 2. How am I looking at these guys this week and maybe rest of season? I think that Carter and Johnson will separate from Coleman, but they kind of have to go back to they have to do it again now, which is really frustrating. So I've got Carter now only as a low end running back 2 against a vulnerable, middling Miami Dolphins front 7. Ty Johnson, he led the team with 8 targets, or led the backfield with 8 targets on 17 routes. So he's basically like the full-time pass catching guy there. But I believe Carter did have 6 targets. Yeah, he did. So, Carter's going to get this dual threat usage. Ty Johnson, you hope for 10 touches with most of it coming through the passing game. I've got him as a borderline RB3/4. Tevin Coleman is not redraft relevant. Washington football team at Carolina Panthers. Over under placed here. Let's see what it opened at. Sorry, just double checking. Opened around at 43. So not one of the higher total points, not one of the higher totaled games this week. Quarterback Taylor Heineke of the Washington football team. This one's brutal. He's a back-end quarterback too. His poor ability, like his deficiencies have really come to light over the last few weeks. And the Carolina Panthers were kind of an enigma. They weren't really themselves to start the season due to a bunch of injuries in the secondary, whether they were on their team or not. CJ Henderson, Stephon Gilmore, or suspension, AJ Boye. But they're all on the field now and they're playing really friggin' well. So Taylor Heineke, not starting him in single QB or even probably QB2 leagues this week. It's tough. There are a handful of wide receivers who have been able to get the job done as of late against the Carolina Panthers, but most of them either have massive target shares or have someone else. The wide receivers who have found success against the Carolina Panthers either have someone else on the field with them that's drawing coverage away, which maybe Terry McLaurin does, or it was basically before all of these guys started playing together. So Terry McLaurin, I've got him as a wide receiver 3, So moving on to the next guy, we may have the Washington football team answer here as a number 2 pass catcher in DeAndre Carter. He's gone 6 of 12 for 107 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns over the last 2 games with 69 return yards. On top of that, he's still the NFL's leader in kick return yards with 586. He's a freak athlete, change of direction and jump drills like out of control. He's great when he gets the ball in his hands, but I don't know if they're going to be able to scheme him touches. Like, he's kind of a gadget guy. And so I don't think that he counts as someone who's really going to pull coverage away. They just need to like put one decent cornerback on him, and I think they can shut him down. So I think that he should be on 12-team rosters, DeAndre Carter, but I don't think that he's really going to be a big time difference maker here. He is a volatile wide receiver 6. Diami Brown is off the injury report for this first time in months. But this is a really bad matchup, so don't start him. You can bench stash him though. Adam Humphries does not need to be rostered right now. It doesn't look like either tight end Logan Thomas or Ricky Seals-Jones are going to play. Thomas is still on injured reserve, and it doesn't look like they're going to bring him off. He got he was sore last week. He's been trying to practice, but it's not going very well. Ricky Seals-Jones is dealing with a hip injury, and I believe he was DNP to start this week. So probably not going to have either one of those guys in this one either. This is a sell high week on Antonio Gibson. So he salvaged his box score by scoring 2 touchdowns last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But here's the thing. He took 24 carries for just 64 yards. Without, I mean, I know he did score the touchdowns, bravo, but like that is terrible efficiency. They gave him a little bit of work in the passing game. He had 2 targets and he took him for like 14 yards. They rested him for 1 week through the bye. He still got the shin injury. They gave him a ton of work, and he wasn't really efficient. So I think it's a sell high. I've got him as a running back 3 this week with a bottomless hole of a floor. J.D. McKissick. Oh man, you can't start him either. He's a running back 5. Carolina is limiting opposing running backs to the fewest receptions per game, 3.6, and fewest receiving yards per game, 24.4. Carolina Panthers, Cam Newton is going to be the starter here, I think. He may be able to make some noise on the ground. I don't know what to make of him for the rest of the season. We got to see how that shoulder holds up under 25 or more pass attempts per week. But Washington is now going to be without starting inside linebacker John Bostic, edge rusher Montez Sweat, and do-it-all defensive lineman Chase Young. So I have Cam Newton as a high-end quarterback 2 this week with like 3 rushing touchdown upside. He would finish as a top 5 player. DJ Moore, screaming buy low. You got to do it if you can go get him right now, because if Newton fails, then you're just back at having a bad quarterback there. And DJ Moore carries some startability, regardless of who's at quarterback. So if it works, then he's going to go back to what we saw in the first month of the season. Washington football team is currently allowing the second most half-point PPR points to opposing wide receivers at 35.8, and they are 28th in pass defense NEF rating. So I've got him as a wide receiver 2. Robbie Anderson and Cam Newton hooked up for a red zone touchdown last week. It literally can't get any worse than it has been. So I think that he's a buy low. Keep in mind, here's the thing. We got to see what Cam's shoulder has left in it, but Ted Ginn Jr. was able to produce 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns over the course of 2 seasons in 2015 and 2016, operating as Cam Newton's designated deep threat. So I think that there's a role for Anderson here. Right now, I've got him as like barely, he's a top 40 wide receiver. Brandon Zylstra is apparently outplaying Terrace Marshall for the slot receiver job. You can't start either one of them. As we know, Cam Newton was very successful with tight end Greg Olsen while they were in Carolina together. Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas can be speculatively added. I would not start either one of them. I would prefer to start or add Tommy Tremble and bench him over Ian Thomas. Cam likes his tight ends. Christian McCaffrey, he is back to the overall running back 1 ranking. What is a great sign is he's seeing a bunch of touches, but over the last 2 weeks since his return from a multi-week hamstring injury, he has played on 49% and 59% of the snaps in his 2 games back. That's huge. If you go back, 2 years ago when he was fully healthy, he missed most of last year with that. Was that the high ankle sprain? But 2 years ago, when he was, the full-time player, he was on the field literally for 99% of the snaps, sometimes 100%. As Dr. Edwin Porras of fantasypoints.com talked about when we had him on a couple of weeks ago, even being out there, even if you're not touching the ball, actually going full speed, cutting, and that puts wear and tear on the body. So I like the fact that his snaps are reduced, but that his touches are fine. He caught, 10 of 10 targets last week, plus carried the ball double digit times. He's the overall running back one. Amir Abdullah and Chuba Hubbard both played on 21% of the snaps last week. Both of them saw 9 carries each. Chuba Hubbard saw nothing through the passing game, but he did convert a red zone touchdown, I think from, sorry, I've got this in my notes somewhere. I think it was like from 5 yards out. Amir Abdullah saw 4 targets though. So he does have a passing game role. Chuba Hubbard probably was just a change of pace guy because Christian McCaffrey and Abdullah brought him down the field. I don't think that usage will hold. So I've got Amir Abdullah as a running back 4, Chuba Hubbard as a running back 5. Indianapolis Colts at Buffalo Bills, over under opened at 49.5. That is fantastic. Here's the thing though, Carson Wentz opened as a negative or plus 7.5 road underdog. Game script should call for him to throw more, but the Indianapolis Colts are just 19th in pass rate when trailing by 7 or more points. So they're going to keep running Jonathan Taylor. And the Bills are number 1 in pass defense NEF rating. They are number 1 in quarterback pressure rate, and they are limiting opposing quarterbacks to 12.3 fantasy points per game. That is the fewest in the NFL. So I have Carson Wentz as a low-end quarterback 2. I would not start him. Michael Pittman Jr., he plummets too. He drops down to a high floor wide receiver 3. He's got moderate usage. He's been very efficient, but we need volume here to depend on him. And we don't know if we're going to get that. Zach Pascal, wide receiver 6, T.Y. Hilton, wide receiver 6, Marley Cox and Jack Doyle, tight end 3s. Jonathan Taylor, on average, in most games, the Colts are rolling him out there for around 15 routes and throwing him the ball 3 times. Does he have spike tweaks? Yes. Could it be this week? Maybe, but we just talked about the fact that they aren't really meaningfully increasing their passing rate. I think that he will have more than 3 targets in this one, just because I think they're going to be more so in an early exchange, like early in the game, but I'm dropping him down to a back end RB1 this week. And that run defense is brutal. Nyheim Hines, back end RB3. Buffalo Bills. So game script does not affect Josh Allen because they continue to throw at like a top 3 pass rate, a pass rate of top Mike Leone here. Sorry, I should just be looking at this, but the point is that Buffalo Bills are number 2 in pass rate above expectation since week 7, and they are number 3 in pass rate above expectation through all 10 weeks. They throw the ball always, no matter what's happening. So I have Josh Allen as a top 3 quarterback this week. I believe they've got him as I have him as the number 2 quarterback on the week. I think that he can take advantage of all the injuries that the Colts have had in their secondary, although perimeter cornerback TJ Carey may return to the lineup. We don't know. That's not changing his ranking though. Stefan Diggs, last week they threw 13 targets his way, which were 10 more than any other Bill on the roster. He caught 8 of them for 162 yards and 1 touchdown. I think that he should have a similar performance against the Indianapolis Colts cornerback group. The Colts are allowing 34.2 half-point PPR points per game to opposing wide receivers. That's 3rd most in the NFL. Stefan Diggs, top 3 wide receiver. Here's the deal with Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, Gabe Davis, and Isaiah McKenzie. Cole Beasley's been dealing with rib injuries, and they've been playing a number of man coverage units where usually they only feature Beasley against zone defenses. Tight end Dawson Knox has been dealing with a hand injury. So the usage at the wide receiver position here for these guys has just been in total flux. It's very difficult to know who's going to be performing what role until we see who the actives and the inactives are. My best guesses are Emmanuel Sanders doesn't do anything this week. Indianapolis is being crushed by wide receivers, but they're limiting opponents' explosive pass play rate to 8%. That's tied for 20th lowest in the league. And Emmanuel Sanders has been running as the designated downfield Z receiver guy on the perimeter. In terms of Cole Beasley. So here's the thing. I'm totally blanking on the defense, the Colts. The Colts nearly only play zone. So this should be a Cole Beasley game. If this is not a Cole Beasley game, if Cole Beasley does not get double-digit targets in here, I'm not saying 5 or 6, I'm saying double-digit targets, then we know that his rib injury is actually affecting him. Gabe Davis has been operating as basically the direct backup to Cole Beasley, frequently going into the slot over the last couple of weeks. However, he's been used downfield as like a field stretcher on the interior rather than the line of scrimmage guy that Cole Beasley has been. We don't know how this is going to play out, but we're going to learn a lot this week. Isaiah McKenzie has basically been all over the formation. He's a DFS Hail Mary guy based on the matchup and Josh Allen's ability. Dawson Knox, he burned us last week, you guys. If you hate me for it, I don't blame him. But he was eased into the lineup, limited snaps, targets, etc. This week, I think that we can go back to him as a mid-tier tight end one. And Indianapolis is allowing the 5th most half-point PPR points to opposing tight ends at 13.7 half-point PPR points per game. What happened with the running backs? We covered this on the Monday show. I think that Matt Breida was basically just part of the game plan. They didn't think that Zach Moss was going to clear the concussion protocol, which he did on Saturday. I think they started the game. They liked what they saw with the matchups. They let Breida get in there for the plays that they had schemed him up, and he scored. He played really great. If he is back on the field for more than like 3% of snaps, I am going to be shocked. I think that Zach Moss returns to the lead back role. I think Devin Singletary cycles in as a part-time pass catcher and big-time change of pace guy. But of course, as we talked about, this team is pass heavy in all situations. So I have Zach Moss as a high floor running back 3. That's it. And Devin Singletary as a running back 4. Detroit Lions at Cleveland Browns. This game opened at 45 points. The over-under opened at 45 points. Detroit Lions look like they're going to start quarterback Tim Boyle, who cannot be started under any circumstance. He is the lowest ranked quarterback on the week 11 slate. Khalif Raymond can't start him. Fantasy wide receiver 7. Amon-Ra St. Brown might be able to do something because Brown's slot cornerback Troy Hill is likely to miss this week's game, but you're not trusting him as more than a wide receiver 6. So let me know if you got that format where you can start a wide receiver 6. Trinity Benton, ignore him. I don't know who he is. Tight end TJ Hawkinson, boom bust tight end 2. Last week taught us that he has a trapdoor of a floor. I don't think that'll be the case this week, but the Browns play lockdown defense on opposing tight ends. DeAndre Swift should get double-digit carries, double-digit targets. I got him as a top 15 running back, but it's a very difficult matchup. Jamal Williams, he's going to be back. Jamar Jefferson with the ankle injury is going to miss maybe a couple of games. Jamal Williams, though, I can't imagine he's featured in this at all because Cleveland is very likely to jump out to an early lead. Baker Mayfield is playing through foot, shoulder, and non-throwing shoulder and knee injuries. Don't start him. Jarvis Landry, probably going to get 8 targets, but I've only got him as a high floor wide receiver 4. Donovan Peoples-Jones has a groin injury and was only able to ride a stationary bike in practice on Thursday. I don't expect him to play. If he does, we'll update it before game time and, we'll let you know. Rashard Higgins probably going to get into some sort of wide receiver role here as Anthony Schwartz is also in the concussion protocol, but I don't think that Higgins is really going to be able to do much of any. I mean, if Case Keenum was at quarterback, it would be a different story. But we have a very, very injured guy throwing the ball back there, and I don't trust any of them. Tight end, the tight end group. So actually, I think this week you could start Austin Hooper as a tight end too, given the injuries at the wide receiver position we just talked about. It's risky because David Njoku or Harrison Bryant could blow up for a big day, but Hooper is a tight end too in my book. Running back Nick Chubb. So it is now Thursday evening, and he still has not cleared the COVID-19 protocol. He has to be activated by, I think it's 1 p.m. PST, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday. Monitor this. The fact that he is vaccinated, so the fact that he's still on this list means that he is experiencing symptoms. We don't know how he's going to be feeling after that. So I think that this is the Detroit Lions front 7 is the thing of legends here. So if he is fully healthy, he's ready to rock, and they're just taking it easy with him. I don't know why, but whatever. He'd probably be like a top 3 ranked running back. Right now, though, I've got him as a low end running back 1 because it does seem like the symptoms are kind of kicking his butt. Dearness Johnson, I think, gets at least 10 touches in this one. They try to just take it easy on Chubb. They're not going to need Chubb to stay in this. They'll just be able to get up and get out of there. So I've got Dearness Johnson ranked as a back and running back 3. Demetric Felton might even see some wide receiver usage. He still is not cleared though. So we'll see from the COVID-19 reserve list. So we'll see what happens. San Francisco 49ers at Jacksonville Jaguars, over under set at 46.5. So last week, what I think will happen here is that the Niners will get up as quickly as possible and then just kill the clock, which is what they did last week, surprisingly, against the Rams. And if they can do that to the Rams, they can certainly do that to the Jaguars. Garoppolo went 15 of 19 for 182 yards, 2 touchdowns, finished as the fantasy quarterback 13. So even in a highly efficient matchup, you see his ceilings kind of limited. I think a similar outing it should be on deck here, but fair to point out that the Jacksonville Jaguars pass defense is 31st in NEF rating. So, maybe he can get up to 250 and 3 touchdowns, maybe. The way that they killed the clock, though, was Eli Mitchell, Jeff Wilson Jr., and Deebo Samuel combined for 32 carries. So that's what they're going to do. Deebo, though, I was wrong to consider him as anything other than a fantasy wide receiver 1 last week. What we learned this week, what we learned from week 10 is that even if he's not going to get double-digit targets, which he didn't, which is what I predicted, he only got 5. They're going to just get him up to double-digit touches. They got him 5 carries. He went off for well over 100 yards and a touchdown. I think it was like 132. Pulling it up right here. 133 and 2 touchdowns. Jeez. So Deebo Samuel locked in wide receiver 1. Brandon Ayuk is a high-end wide receiver 3. Jawan Jennings, slot receiver. He's not really getting enough work. But Mohamed Sanu, I think, is still out this week. George Kittle, elite tight end 1. What's going on with Elijah Mitchell? It's very strange. So he had a procedure on Wednesday, I think, maybe Tuesday, to have a pin put in for a broken finger. From what I'm seeing from like Dr. Jesse Morse is that protocol here is that he shouldn't face contact for up to 4 weeks when there's a pin in there. But there's conflicting reports right now. The practice report said that he was a non-participant, but I saw another report, I think from Nick Wagner, that indicated that he was a participant in practice, but he had a non-contact jersey on. So that is called a limited participant. He was rocking the non-contact jersey with his ribs injury for the last couple of weeks. So I don't know what the deal is with who's going to start, whoever it is. If Elijah Mitchell is active, he's a he's a high-end running back too. Sorry. Yeah. Got him ranked probably like RB 16 or so. And if active, if Mitchell is active, then Jeff Wilson Jr. is a mid-tier running back 3. If Mitchell is inactive, Wilson slides up to probably running back 18, maybe running back 17. He's going to get 18 carries. He'll do a great job. We talked about that kind of at the beginning, and I already mentioned. So you know the deal with Kyle Juszczyk. Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence cannot be trusted as anything other than a mid to low quarterback 2. Marvin Jones, fantasy wide receiver 4. Just the usage is not there. Jamal Agnew is now being used as a slot receiver, a return man, and as a running back from time to time. So you can start him as a fantasy wide receiver 4. He is 1 spot ahead of Marvin Jones. Thing is, slot cornerback for the San Francisco 49ers, K'Wan Williams, is not that great. So I think that Jamal Agnew, he's just getting scheme touches, and he is 4-3 runner. So fantasy wide receiver 4. Laviska Shenault, check back next year. Dan Arnold is a high floor tight end 1. I think you should start him unless you have an elite tight end 1. James Robinson, heel and knee injuries, was somewhat eased into the lineup last week, but still handled way more touches in the backfield than anybody else did. 12 carries, 5 targets. He's a back end RB1 in this one. They'll probably, play from behind, but maybe that means he gets like 8 or 9 targets. Houston Texans at Tennessee Titans, over under points scored set opened at 45. The only person that I'm going to even don't start Tyrod Taylor. He's a fantasy quarterback 3. Brandon Cooks is a fantasy wide receiver 3. He'll see 13 targets and they'll be bad. Tennessee Titans side of things, Ryan Tannehill. This one is nuts. So the Titans opened as 10.5 point favorites. They've got a decent shot at covering that spread. I think that if they do, Ryan Tannehill is going to be an integral part of that process. So I am firing him up as a quarterback one. AJ Brown, last 2 games against the Texans, went 5 of 7 for 52 yards and 2 touchdowns, 10 of 11 for 151 yards and 1 touchdown. He is an elite wide receiver one in this. Marcus Johnson, tried to warn you guys. Hopefully y'all listened. Hauled in 5 of 6 targets for 100 yards last week, added 54 return yards on top. So hopefully you're getting 25 return yards per fantasy point. This week, he is a wide receiver 3. I think he can just be that efficient again. Nick Westbrook-Akeen and Chester Rogers alternated as the team's starting slot receiver. They are both boom bust wide receiver 5s. Tight end Jeff Swaim, Anthony Ferkser, and Michael Pruitt all ran 14 routes last week. So we don't have a clear intended usage guy here, but Jeff Swaim has led that position in targets, I think, for 3 straight weeks. Yep. 3 straight weeks. During that span, he has seen 14 targets, and the other 2 have seen a combined 6. So Tannehill likes him, but he's just not on the field enough for me to really feel great about it. Here's the thing, though. Houston's allowing 14.1 half-point PPR points to opposing tight ends, 4th most in the NFL. I've got Jeff Swaim as a viable tight end 2 streaming option. Do with that what you will. Running backs D'Onta Foreman, Adrian Peterson, and Jeremy McNichols. I expect D'Onta Foreman to continue leading this backfield. I don't expect him to be terribly efficient, but I think that against his former team, who cut him due to a number of reasons, but obviously, namely the fact that he ruptured his Achilles, I think that a guy like Vrabel, who's kind of a player's coach, is going to want to fire up the guy against his old team. Houston's run defense has allowed 1,232 rush yards, 15 rushing touchdowns, both top 2 marks in the NFL. So I think that D'Onta Foreman is a viable RB3. Adrian Peterson, nada. Nope, don't even think about it. You can drop him. Jeremy McNichols should be rostered in 12-team formats. He's a running back 4 this week, but I don't think that you need to start him this week. Green Bay Packers at Minnesota Vikings opened at 49.5 over under points scored. Rodgers had a tough week last week. He was definitely tired from his 10-day bout with COVID or whatever that timeline was, and he suffered a toe injury. That's not great. I think he can still go out there and be quarterback 1 this week against a very, very injured Minnesota Vikings defense, but a toe injury is going to limit his mobility. Devonte Adams, last 2 games against Minnesota, 14 catches, 17 targets, 156 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns, 7 catches, 11 targets, 53 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. He's an elite wide receiver 1. Randall Cobb, wide receiver 7. Allen Lazard is dealing with a shoulder injury and is unlikely to play. Marquez Valdes-Scantling was downgraded with an injury midweek. That is not good. Josiah DeGuara is not fantasy relevant. A.J. Dillon is a top 5 running back. He is flashed as both a rusher and a receiver. He should see over 20 touches with Aaron Jones out for a little bit. The Vikings are missing both defensive end Danielle Hunter and defensive run stuffing defensive tackle Michael Pierce. Yeah, Dillon's top 5 guy. Running back Patrick Taylor should be bench stashed in 12-team leagues. Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins, top 12 quarterback this week. The Green Bay defense is so banged up that they signed Whitney Mercilus midseason after the same week that he was cut, or the week after he was cut. Immediately made him a regular rotational guy, playing over 40% of the snaps on the defensive line. He got hurt. He is out, and that is a big blow. So just they signed a washed up defensive end, and even his loss is significant. So yeah, I think that the Minnesota Vikings offensive weapons can get the job done here. Kirk Cousins is a quarterback 1. Justin Jefferson he's wide receiver 1. Adam Thielen, mixed results against the Packers over the last few years, but he's had fantastic performances against them. Most recently in 2020, went 6 of 8 for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. I've got him as a safe wide receiver 2. KJ Osborne has lost out on the number 3 pass catching job to tight end Tyler Conklin. Do not start KJ Osborne as anything more than a fantasy wide receiver 7. Tyler Conklin is a tight end 1. And He will be aided by the fact that Packers strong safety Darnell Savage was added to the injury report with an ankle injury, I believe, midweek. That's not great. So yeah, Tyler Conklin, definitely a top 12 tight end play. Dalvin Cook, top 3 running back against a Green Bay Packers defensive front that is 26th in run defense. Neff. Alexander Madison, the number 1 primary bell cow backup in fantasy football. Baltimore Ravens at Chicago Bears, over under points scored opened at 45 points. Lamar Jackson is the overall quarterback 1 this week. Chicago's defense is allowing an explosive pass play 10% of the time. That is tied for 4th most in the NFL. They're going to crush it. Speaking of Marquis Brown, who is destroying defenses as an explosive downfield receiver, is a safe wide receiver 1 this week. Some folks were concerned about what Rashad Bateman's presence would do to Marquis Brown's target share once Bateman entered the lineup. Well, through the first 5 weeks of the 2021 season, while Rashad Bateman was on injured reserve, Marquis Brown was only averaging 7.6 targets per game. Since Bateman has been added to the lineup over the last 4 games, Brown's now seeing 11 targets per game. This is what having a real deal X receiver on the roster does for a downfield guy who is as good as it gets at the position. Evan Silva called him a transcendental talent when he was drafted by the Ravens, and I think that that's proving to be the case. Marquis Brown will be an era-defining downfield guy. Again, he's a wide receiver 1. Also noteworthy that the Chicago Bears free safety Eddie Jackson is dealing with a hamstring injury. We don't know if he'll play, but if he is playing with a hamstring injury, good chance Marquis Brown is going to be able to catch a few long ones on him. Rashad Bateman averaging 7 targets. So he's averaging 7 targets per game. But what does that mean? First 2 games, 6 targets. Most recent 2 games, 8 targets. So they have increased his usage. He's averaging 4.5 receptions, 60.25 receiving yards per game. He has not scored yet. Once he finds the end zone, his buy low window closes. Trade for him right now. He is a wide receiver 3. Devon Duvernay, right. So we weren't sure what Sammy Watkins' return to the lineup from a multi-week hamstring would do to Devon Duvernay, who was running as the primary slot receiver from time to time. Well, Devon Duvernay ran 87.1 routes in the slot on a 51% snap share. That's since the team's week 8 bye. When Watkins was introduced to the game last week, or to the team last week, reintroduced to the lineup last week, Watkins ran out there and he caught 1 of 3 targets for 7 yards and he lost a fumble. So I don't think that Sammy Watkins is going to be a fantasy factor moving forward. I think he's just going to be a rotational guy. Devon Duvernay is a wide receiver 4 in this one. And I think that he does garner DFS consideration given the fact that Bears slot quarterback Duke Shelley is not good. Ravens tight end Mark Andrews is an elite tight end 1. The team cut Le'Veon Bell this week, which presumably means that former fill-in lead back Latavius Murray is finally returning from his high ankle sprain. He has returned to practice, so I think that that's the case. Devonta Freeman has played okay as the lead guy in his stead, so I think he probably keeps that job. Freeman, that is. I think he keeps the lead back job, but I think it'll basically just be a 1-2 punch with Freeman and Murray toting the rock. Tyson Williams, not even thinking about him anymore. The Bears front 7 is 22nd in run defense Neff rating. So I've got both these guys as high floor RB3. Chicago Bears, Justin Fields. The Bears are 6.5 underdogs in this one, despite being the home team. He has been a quarterback 1 last couple of weeks. I've got him as a top 5 quarterback though. With quarterback 1 upside, with top 12 upside, just the way the rankings played out this week, he didn't make it into the top 12. Darnell Mooney should crush it this week because Allen Robinson is dealing with a hamstring injury, and very much like the Chicago Bears, the Baltimore Ravens are also getting pummeled by teams on explosive pass plays they're allowing that are occurring 12% of the time. That's tied for second most in the NFL. So the downfield receiver, Darnell Mooney, should be able to eat on that. I've got him as a wide receiver 3. Marquis Goodwin, some DFS consideration as he's also a downfield guy, as is Jakeem Grant, but they're both wide receiver 7s. Cole Kmet, I think it was Nope, different. Thinking of a different young tight end. Anyway, Baltimore is allowing 14.7 half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends, third most in the league. Cole Kmet is a high-end tight end too. We thought Khalil Herbert might maintain some sort of a role, even when David Montgomery returned from injured reserve. That was not the case. I believe Khalil Herbert, he had 4 carries last week, and that's it. So David Montgomery is back to being a mid to high running back too. He can get into the top 12 at week's end because Baltimore Ravens run stuffing defensive lineman Brandon Williams is not practicing again due to a shoulder injury. Hope he gets healthy. Great player, but when he's out of the lineup, running backs will take advantage of that. Sunday, 1 p.m. slate, PST. Cincinnati Bengals at Las Vegas Raiders. Over under opened at 49 points. Joe Burrow is a no-brainer quarterback 1. We talked about this on the show earlier, but the Bengals are number 1 in pass rate, over expected in the red zone. So he's just got shots at touchdowns nonstop. Jamar Chase is a locked-in wide receiver 1. His worst game of the year last year, he still recorded he still recorded 13 targets. T. Higgins, back-end wide receiver 2 with a rock-solid role. Tyler Boyd usually only is successful when the slot cornerback matchup is a good one. Las Vegas's Nate Hobbs is not great, but he's not bad. So I've got Boyd as a wide receiver 5. CJ Uzoma, though, should rock the house here. Like Boyd, he's very matchup dependent, and Las Vegas is the most fantasy-friendly defense to opposing tight ends, allowing 15.7 half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends. So he is a tight end 1 this week. Joe Mixon, locked in running back 1. The Raiders are 25th in run defense NEF rating. Las Vegas side of things, Derek Carr, I think that he's going to smash here. He's a mid-tier quarterback 1. Why, you may ask? Because in the wake of in Henry Ruggs' absence, he was cut from the team 2 weeks ago. Hunter Renfrow has been an absolute machine. Slot receiver Hunter Renfrow has been an absolute machine. And Bengals slot cornerback Mike Hilton is awful. They use him as a blitzer because he cannot cover. So I think that Carr is a mid-tier quarterback 1. I've got Hunter Renfrow as a high-end wide receiver 2. I'm talking like above guys. I think like double checking here, but yeah, I have Renfrow ranked ahead of DK Metcalf, Adam Thielen, Christian Kirk, just to communicate this. And maybe he does not end up getting or doesn't have the same type of ceiling, but like I think that Hunter Renfrow has access, is as guaranteed 5 or 6 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown as like any player is on this slate. Like this is a cannot miss matchup. So doing quick math right there, that's let's say 6 can, yeah. So that's 15 points. Like I think Hunter Renfrow is as much of a lock for 15 half-point PPR points as any receiver is this week. Bryan Edwards is now a viable wide receiver 4. Deshaun Jackson, you can start him if you want, but you're banking on a guy who is not playing full complement of snaps and plays a volatile role. I've got him as a wide receiver 6. Darren Waller is an elite tight end 1. Josh Jacobs, this one's rough. The Bengals are number 7 in run defense NEF ratings. And Jacobs gets pass catching usage sometimes, but he's basically just a one-dimensional north-south rusher in this offense. I've got him as a fantasy wide receiver 3. Running back 3. Kenyon Drake, though, he can probably show up as a running back 4. Cincinnati allows 8 running back receptions per game. That's most in the NFL. And they're allowing 61 running back receiving yards per game, which is 4th most in the NFL. Arizona Cardinals at Seattle Seahawks, over under opened at 49 and a half points scored. Kyler Murray looks like he might actually play with the ankle injury. That would be fantastic. It's a divisional matchup. Here's the thing, a key note. Seattle Seahawks do it all safety, defensive lineman, linebacker Jamal Adams appears to have suffered a groin strain during Thursday's practice. He was downgraded midweek. That's really bad. Obviously, the guy plays banged up. A soft tissue injury downgrade midweek. I think Jamal Adams is going to sit, which means their best, edge rusher, basically, because they send him on blitzes constantly, is going to be out. So Kyler Murray is a quarterback 1. Christian Kirk, he's going to operate as the de facto number one wide receiver here again this week because DeAndre Hopkins has yet to practice both on Wednesday and Thursday due to his hamstring injury. They should have put him on injured reserve, whatever. Seattle Seahawks slot cornerback Ugo Amadi is terrible. He's a guy who we've been targeting all season. Christian Kirk ran, I think, like 70-something% of his routes in the slot over the last 2 weeks, even with Hopkins out. So yeah, I fire him up. Christian Kirk, high end wide receiver 2. I think I've got him like right after Hunter Renfrow. AJ Green, he should be able to do some damage here. I think he's a high floor, a very safe wide receiver 3. Seattle's pass defense NEF rating comes in 23rd. Rondale Moore, backup slot receiver, occasional ball carrier. His average air yards per target are 1.9. That is the lowest in the NFL. You can start him. I mean, especially in DFS, but in redraft, he's a wide receiver 6. Antoine Wesley, not relevant. Zac Ertz has seen between 4 and 6 targets per week since he went to Arizona. That's not great, but with Jamal Adams maybe out, I've got him as like a mid-tier tight end too. Could finish the top 15 tight end. James Conner, Chase Edmonds is still on injured reserve, and number two running back, Benjamin is dealing with a groin injury. So I think James Conner, he's back to just being a safe top 15 running back, not back to it, but he is a safe top 15 running back. Russell Wilson, we've talked about this a lot. He has to teach his middle finger, perhaps the most important finger. He has to reteach it how to grip a ball and how to throw a ball. It's never going to be the same. He can recover, but he came back too early and he looked awful last week. So he's a low end quarterback too until he proves us otherwise. DK Metcalf, this one's tough. Perimeter cornerbacks, Marco Wilson and Robert Alford are not great. Alford is better than Marco Wilson. Wilson's just bad. Alford's kind of been had for touchdowns. He hasn't given up a gaudy amount of yardage. I think that Metcalf can get open and he can go up and just win if Wilson can put the ball anywhere near him. So I'm keeping him as a wide receiver 2, but he's a very, very volatile one. Something of note, Cardinals safety Budda Baker was downgraded from limited participation on Wednesday to did not participate on Thursday. So if the guy who, is there to try to prevent DK Metcalf from taking the top off, if he's not in the lineup, then that's a huge boon to Metcalf's potential outcome. Tyler Lockett, just a wide receiver 4. Freddie Swain, not relevant. Gerald Everett was very, very clearly the preferred safety blanket for Russell Wilson last week. He caught all 8 targets for 63 yards. That is a high floor tight end 2. He has tight end 1 upside. In terms of the running backs, this is a total disaster. Chris Carson, we don't know that he's coming back. He's been designated to return, but they don't have to start him this week. They don't have to bring him back this week. Designated to return from injured reserve. It's a neck injury. It's probably got arthritis in there. Dr. Jesse Morse has some good videos on it just to show like what is going on in there, and it's bad. We don't know if he's going to be able to return or 2 if he's going to be able to play anymore. So I don't think Chris Carson's coming back this week. Alex Collins was then downgraded from a limited participant to a did not participate on Thursday with his groin injury, which is what happens when you try to push through a soft tissue injury. So I don't think he's going to play either. It's probably going to be a mixture of DJ Dallas and Travis Homer, and that is ugly as hell. And we don't know which one it's going to be. Dallas has seen, I think, a little bit more bell cow usage in emergency situations than Homer has, but we're just going to have to try to read the tea leaves as the week progresses. Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys at Cincinnati. Dallas Cowboys at Kansas City Chiefs. This game opened with an over-under point scored mark of 55.5. The simple answer here is start them all. Dak Prescott, top 5 fantasy quarterback. CeeDee Lamb, Drake nailed it already. He's a top 5 wide receiver this week. He ran 69.6% of his routes in the slot. The Chiefs have had to basically try out different guys at slot because Daniel Sorensen could not get the job done. They tried L'Jarius Sneed there, and he's been really bad. So slides. Geez. CeeDee Lamb is a slot receiver this week, primary slot receiver for Dallas this week, and he is a top 5 fantasy option. Amari Cooper ran 37.1% of his routes in the slot last week, so he's going to get that bump against L'Jarius Sneed, but he's still going to roast these guys on the perimeter. Kansas City overall 27th in pass defense NEF, and the Chiefs are giving up 30.5 half-point PPR points per game to opposing wide receivers. That's tied for 10th most in the NFL. I've also got Amari Cooper as a wide receiver 1. Michael Gallup, he was eased in last week, and I think they'll continue to put him on a snap count. He was in on 53% of the snaps and saw 5 targets. If he gets that kind of usage again this week, I think he'll be on like 60% of snaps and probably get 7 targets. That's enough for him to hit. It'll be volatile, but I've got him as a borderline wide receiver 3/4. Dalton Schultz might actually be getting downgraded with Michael Gallup return to the lineup. We'll know for sure this week because Kansas City is allowing 12.8 half-point PPR points to opposing tight ends, which is 9th most in the NFL. So if Schultz can't get it done this week, then we probably got to downgrade Schultz from a tight end 1, as I ranked him this week, to a tight end 2. Ezekiel Elliott, hey, Tony Pollard's got a role here, and it's kind of eating into Zeke's usage. He's a mid to high running back 1, and part of that's just because I don't love some of the other running back situations. Like I might actually, I don't know, I might take her with this and get a couple guys ahead of him, but he's a running back 1. I mean, they're going to score a million points, so he's going to fall into the end zone. But yeah, I think I've got him as ranked as running back 6, and I've got him ranked as running back 5, and maybe I drop him to running back 7. But yeah, Tony Pollard is a high floor running back 3. Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes back to being a top 5 quarterback for fantasy purposes. I've got him as a quarterback 3. Tyreek Hill, elite wide receiver 1. Travis Kelce, elite tight end 1. The wide receiver of note is Byron Pringle, who ran 11 more routes than any non-Tyreek Hill wide receiver last week. He caught 4 or 5 passes for 46 yards and 1 touchdown. That is the kind of outing you want a guy to have in the Kansas City Chiefs offense when he is given a chance to have it. So I've got Byron Pringle as the number 2 wide receiver in Kansas City moving forward. He is a borderline wide receiver. Actually, he's just a wide receiver 4 in this one. I'm changing it. We're doing it live. Yeah, he's a wide receiver 4. I don't expect Clyde Edwards-Helaire to return this week. Early in the week, Andy Reid was talking about his return, likely being this week, or that he's got a good shot. Now he's talking about the fact that Kansas City has a bye in week 12, and they're probably going to wait for CEH. They're probably going to wait to activate him until week 13 after the bye. Jarrell Williams is a mid to high running back 2 with a very easy path to RB1 upside. Sunday Night Football, Pittsburgh Steelers at Los Angeles Chargers. A couple of injuries and strange things going on here. So Ben Roethlisberger is on the COVID-19 reserve list. He is vaccinated, so he can come back if he produces 2 negative tests over the span of 48 hours. He's cutting it close. We need to hear of a positive test on Friday. We need to hear of a negative test on Friday for us to think that it's going to be him, not Mason Rudolph. Here's the deal, though. Chargers defensive lineman Jerry Tillery was placed on the COVID-19 reserve list after a positive test. I don't expect him to play. Edge rusher Joey Bosa, who is not vaccinated, has been designated a close contact. He can return before this. It's a 5-day stint on there where they test you rigorously. He can return. The 5-day window will be up before Sunday, but he could also have contracted COVID because he was a close contact. So monitor this. If he's out, then Steelers can score some more points. Roethlisberger, he's a back end quarterback too, though, because his arm is shot. I mean, we might prefer Mason Rudolph here. Deontay Johnson is going to get over 10 targets, so I've got him as a high end wide receiver 2. James Washington, Ray McLeod, and Chase Claypool. This is bizarre. A week ago, we were being told that Chase Claypool's toe injury was bad enough to keep him out it was not season ending. Now he's practicing in a limited fashion. It seems like he's got turf toe and the team's having him practice. It seems really, really friggin' stupid. But if he's out there, then he's out there. We don't know what's going to happen yet. We got to wait for the injury report tomorrow, see what goes down. But James Washington and Ray McLeod would be the start with Deontay Johnson would round out the 3 wide sets. If Claypool can't go, if he can go, we will sift through the slot receiver usage over the last week. We know it's been Ray McLeod, but Washington was getting kind of shifted in there from time to time. So yeah, we'll parse through depending on Chase Claypool's injury and update you all. They'll probably Washington and McLeod will probably just share slot receiver duties. Yeah, if Claypool's on the field, but you can't trust Chase Claypool. Like this turf toe, that he could go out at any moment. Tight end Pat Freiermuth is the full-time tight end one here now, and you can start him as a tight end one in fantasy. Even with Eric Ebron back in the lineup last week, he returned from injury. Freiermuth still saw 9 targets, and the Chargers are allowing 13.3 half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends, 6th most in the NFL. We mentioned the defensive line, COVID issues. So Najee Harris is already a top 3 running back this week, but if both of those, if Bosa is out, then he might, I don't know, maybe I'll slide him up to running back 2, but you get it. He's an elite fantasy running back this year. And the Chargers are the single worst team in our run defense efficiency NEF database. Yeah, they're ranked 32 out of 32. So start Najee Harris. And then all sorts of strange stuff going on with the backfield. Behind him, we don't know who Anthony McFarland Jr. should be the number 2 running back, but there appears to be some sort of power struggle or positional battle going on. Los Angeles Chargers side of things. Justin Herbert was a full participant in practice today on Thursday, but he was listed with an oblique injury. So that's like your upper abs. Don't know what's going on. You need that to throw though. So monitor that. I've still got him as a top 5 fantasy quarterback because he was a full practice participant. And Pittsburgh is likely to be without stud cornerback Joe Hayden, all pro pass rusher TJ Watt. And I think all pro as safety Minkah Fitzpatrick, at least Pro Bowl. We know he's a beast out there. Hayden's got a foot injury. TJ Watt's got a knee injury. He's probably out for a few weeks. And Minkah Fitzpatrick's on the COVID-19 reserve list. And it sounds like Mike Tomlin does not think he's going to play. And he's talking about how it's a multi-man job to try to replace him. So yeah, Herbert, top 5 quarterback. Since the Chargers week 7 bye, Keenan Allen is the wide receiver 6 in half-point PPR scoring. He's a locked-in wide receiver 1. I think that this is a bounce-back place for Mike Williams. I have him as a wide receiver 2, especially with the injuries. Josh Palmer has won the number 3 wide receiver job. He's taken it from Jalen Guyton. He should be bench stashed in 12-team leagues, and you can use him in DFS this week. Donald Parham and Jared Cook at least are not competing with Steven Anderson. That looks like it was a 1-week thing, but they're still just tight end 2s because they got to play against each other. Austin Eckler is a locked-in running back 1. Justin Jackson is back from a quad injury now, so he should resume number 2 running back duties. He should be rostered in 12-team formats. Boom. That is it for the Sunday slate. Thank you all so much for listening. Brian Drake, thank you so much for coming on. I'm a massive fan. And everyone else here should be too. Everybody needs to go check out the Fantasy Football Hustle. He and Jordan McFarland rock it every single week. Check out Drake's show on Sirius XM Radio. Hit me up at ginger__Nick, spelled NIC. If you have any questions, hit us up at NerdballFF on Twitter. Till next week.